Have you ever noticed how the more you try to explain yourself, the less people actually listen? You speak, you clarify, you pour out your truth, and somehow it still gets twisted. They don't hear you to understand. They hear you to respond, to judge, to manipulate. You think you're defending yourself, but really you're handing over your power. Every explanation becomes a new opportunity for them to question you, to poke holes in your reasoning, to make you feel like you owe them something, your thoughts, your intentions, your energy. The moment you try to make someone see your side, you become vulnerable to their opinion. You start performing. You start justifying your existence. And the more you explain, the more you disconnect from your own truth, because suddenly it's no longer about what's right. It's about being accepted. But here's what no one tells you. When you stop explaining, everything changes. Silence disturbs people more than any argument. It removes their control. It forces them to face their own narrative without your input. It creates a wall they can't climb, because silence gives them nothing to grab onto, nothing to twist, nothing to fight against. Imagine your silence like a fortress, tall, grounded, untouchable, a space where your peace becomes your message, where the absence of words speaks louder than the need to explain. That's power. You're not avoiding the truth. You're refusing to hand it over for validation. You're choosing to protect your energy, your clarity, your mind. And the most powerful people are not the ones who shout to prove their worth. They're the ones who no longer need to. Most people aren't looking for your truth. They're looking for a crack, a flaw, a reason to doubt you. And when you explain yourself, you give them that opening. You hand them the blade and hope they use it gently. But they won't. They'll use your words against you, not because you're wrong, but because it's easier to break something than to understand it. This is why refusing to explain isn't rudeness. It's wisdom. It's awareness of how energy works, how power shifts in silence. When you stop explaining, people don't get what they expect, and that disrupts the pattern. They're used to drama, defense, conflict, but you give them stillness. You give them control over nothing. And that's when the real transformation happens, when you choose peace over performance. Think of it like fire. The more oxygen you give it, the bigger it gets. Explanation is oxygen to manipulation. You feed it with your words, your emotions, your attention. But remove the oxygen, refuse to explain, and the fire burns out. Your silence becomes a boundary, a signal that you're not open for negotiation, not seeking approval, not available for emotional games. Stoic philosophy teaches us that we're not responsible for how others interpret us. We're responsible for how we carry ourselves. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That's the code. You don't need to explain who you are. You need to embody it, show it in how you move, how you respond, how you protect your space. Words are optional when your presence speaks volumes. So when someone demands an explanation, pause. Ask yourself, do they deserve your energy, or are they just hungry for control? Because not everyone who asks a question is seeking truth. Some ask to trap you in your own words. Some want your peace because they don't have any. And the more you talk, the more they take. Give them silence, give them absence, and watch how loud your stillness becomes. There's a kind of silence that isn't emptiness, it's strategy. It's the refusal to let someone else direct the narrative of who you are. Every time you speak to prove yourself, you hand them editing rights to your story. But when you remain silent, the story remains yours. Unedited, unapologetic, undeniable. Some people will call your silence arrogance. Others will say it's weakness. But here's the truth. People project what they don't understand. Silence threatens those who thrive on reaction. Your refusal to explain isn't a wall, it's a mirror. It reflects their expectations, their control habits, their insecurities, and they'll do anything to get you to break it. That's why your stillness has to be stronger than their noise. Every second you don't react, you gain ground. You regain control of your time, your emotions, your space. You send a message, not with words, but with absence. You say, I'm no longer explaining my value to those who can't recognize it on their own. And that message, it lands. There's a strange power in mystery, in being unreadable, because people fear what they can't predict. And the moment they stop being able to predict you, they start respecting you, maybe even fearing you, because you've become something they can't define. You're no longer fitting into their narrative. You've built your own. So next time someone corners you for an explanation, pause. Smile if you must. But remember, your silence isn't empty. It's full of power they're not ready to face. If this message speaks to you, hit subscribe and stay, because the next shift in your power begins with the next video. You don't need to defend what's already true. Truth doesn't panic, it doesn't chase, it doesn't beg to be seen, it simply is. And when you stand in that truth without the need to justify it, you become immovable. People may still question you, attack you, twist your words, but none of it sticks when you refuse to fight battles that don't deserve your energy. That's what Stoic power really is. Not the absence of emotion, but the discipline of choosing where to place it. It's the moment you realize that not every attack needs a counterattack. Not every accusation deserves a defense. And not every person deserves access to your mind. Think of how much energy you've wasted trying to explain yourself to people who already made up their minds. Think of the times you tried to fix misunderstandings with those who were committed to misunderstanding you. You didn't lose those people. You freed yourself from the burden of trying to make the blind see. Your silence is not you giving up. It's you stepping out from the noise, from the chaos, from the constant need to prove that you're good, kind, worthy, because you already are. And the people meant to see it will recognize it, without explanations, without performance, without permission. There is power in walking away without a speech, in knowing that your truth doesn't need an audience to remain valid. That's what real self-respect looks like. Quiet, calm, unshakable. When they try to provoke you and you choose peace. When they expect a reaction and you give them stillness. When they seek a weakness and find only silence. Because sometimes the strongest message is not what you say, it's what you don't. When you no longer explain yourself, you shift the dynamic. You stop playing the role they wrote for you, the one where you justify, clarify, defend. That role is designed to keep you small, to keep you on the back foot. But the moment you reject it, everything tilts in your favor. Suddenly, you're not reacting, you're observing, you're not pleading, you're choosing. That silence you hold, it's louder than any justification. It tells them, I owe you nothing. And in that space of refusal, you find your dignity again. Not every moment needs your commentary. Not every situation needs your voice. Sometimes your absence says more than presence ever could. That's not avoidance, it's intention. That's not running, it's rising. Because you're not here to convince people who doubt your worth. You're here to protect it, to guard it like something sacred, because it is. And you don't place sacred things in reckless hands. Remember this, people who truly value you will never put you in a position where you have to prove yourself to be understood. They listen without interrogation. They support without needing to dissect you. They see you even when you say nothing. And the rest, let them wonder. Let them sit in the silence. Let them hear everything they refuse to understand echo back in the space you left behind. There comes a time when protecting your peace becomes more important than proving your point. When the need to be right fades and the need to be whole rises. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. You begin to see that silence isn't just the absence of words, it's the presence of power. A power that no one can manipulate, distort, or steal. A power that lives in your restraint, your clarity, your refusal. And the more you live in that space, the more untouchable you become. Not cold, not distant, just grounded, rooted, alive in your own energy. Watching the chaos, but not becoming it. Letting go, not because you're defeated, but because you're free. you start to realize that the ones who demand explanations the loudest are often the ones least capable of hearing truth, and that no amount of explaining can satisfy a heart closed by its own noise. So instead of speaking to be understood, you start moving to be felt. Instead of proving, you start existing. And in that shift, everything changes. The conversations you used to chase now chase you. The people who overlooked you now wonder how they lost access. And maybe the deepest kind of power is this: to no longer need anyone's permission to be who you are, fully, freely, silently. Now ask yourself this: if someone can only respect you when you explain yourself, did they ever respect you at all? If this made you pause, subscribe now, because what's coming next will speak to the parts of you no one else ever has.